Hey everyone, this is Suresh. In this video tutorial, we are going to learn about IndexedDB's object store concept. Uh, object store is similar to the table in a relational database system, uh, but here in the IndexedDB we call it as an object store because it's going to store mm, um, the data as objects. Okay. um, Though we have already seen this, whenever we try to open a DB, we are getting back the IDB request object that would have many parameters, attributes, and methods. If there is an error while trying to open a DB, then the error object would have the details, and on error handler will be triggered. At the same time, the result is going to be undefined. But if the operation is successfully done, then we are going to get the result back in that result node. Okay, so what we are getting in this case, we are trying to open a DB, so we would be getting IDB database object back in the result node. This is how the IDB database interface looks like. That's that. So that is like a DB handler. It would have all the details about the DB and all the methods to manipulate the DB. So for example, you can see it here. It has a name, a version, and object store names. Object store names are uh, the store names that this particular DB has got. Then you can, using this DB handler, you can create a new object store in that DB. Then we have a few other methods. We'll discuss it when we demo this part. Hmm. So, as I have told you before, request dot result would have value if the request is successfully done, or if opening a DB is successfully done. We are going to, that has the create object store method in it, so we are going to use create object store to create a table in IndexedDB. Mm, uh, it can take two parameters. One is the name of the object store, and the other one is optional parameters. Um, IDB database would return IDB object store object back uh, that has a bunch of methods and properties. Using this, we can mm, add a record into the object store. We can update the record. We can delete. We can clear the object store. So it has got a lot of things. We'll go through most of them in our demo. Yeah, let's get into the demo. So this is what we have seen in our last tutorial. Let me make sure we start everything. So mm, this is what we have done the last tutorial. Let me clear everything. Everything is clear. And one more thing I would like to stress here is that you can change the structure of the DB only in the on upgrade needed event handler. You cannot change it anywhere else. That will throw an error message. Here, let me add this event argument here. Then, as I told, it's going to be DB handler. I'm just calling it as a DB handler. Um, Result. When this request opening a DB succeeds, then we would get the result back in this. So it is similar to request dot result. I just wanted to make sure that whoever calls this one, we get that um, object's result. So there's a DB handler, and once we get this DB handler, then we can create a DB, sorry, a table that's called create object store. Let me call this DBS frameworks. So the idea is that I would have a DB called frameworks. Then I'll create tables like CSS. Uh, then CSS table will have CSS frameworks detail. Then I'll create a JS table. Then the JS table would have JS frameworks details. Okay. So I've just renamed and call this. Let's call this object store as CSS. Everything is done. I go here, I refresh. The on upgrade needed is called success. Let's go here and refresh this. You can see that you have created a table or object store in this DB. You can see the DB name is now frameworks under this origin, and we have a table called CSS, and the table has two columns. One is key value, so there is always going to be key value pair, but the value can have an object, and you can do a search over that object. Okay, that's a big difference between web storage API. Now the key column and the value column are empty because we don't have any record into it. Let's try to add a record, then we know. So the create object store is going to give you an IDB object store object back. That means that's going to be a store handler, object store handler. With this you can modify the table. Okay, so let me call it as object store handler. Now the store handler has the store handler variable has this handler to the table or object store. With that you can modify it, right? Let's add some value in it. Let's call it as name start with bootstrap, then bootstrap's grid 12 column grid, and is it a responsive? Yeah, it supports, so let's add it as true. So now I have added I'm just trying to add a record with the value of this object. The object has so the object has a name, grid is a responsive value in it. Let's clear this so that I don't need to. That on upgrade needed would be called whenever there is an upgrade. Whenever there is a upgrade. In our case, I'm not upgrading, so every time I just clear it so that on upgrade needed is called. I refresh, but there is an error. You can look at this one. It says that failed to execute add on IDB object store. That's what the store handler has, right? Then the object store uses out of line keys and has no key generator. That means mm, we are not giving any key. Okay, you have seen that object store has two columns, key and value. We are just giving the value. We are not giving any key value to the table, so it doesn't know where to store it, and that makes sense. This is called out of line because this is not inline. What is inline? Inline is something like uh, you can specify a primary key, and if you specify a primary key, then that's going to be called as inline. If you don't specify anything, that's out of line. That's not inline. Is in line with your values. That we'll see it, then you'll understand. uh, Key generator is something like auto increment. There is nothing we have mentioned, so it throws this error. Ideally, the error means you don't have a key assigned for that particular value. And what I'm going to do is that um, so this add method takes two parameters. The first one is value, the second one is key. I'll give as 1. Okay, and I just refresh. See, successfully created, it's upgraded and success. Let's go here and refresh our DB and check the values in the table. You can see that the key which I have given as 1, and the value is the object. Okay, it has everything in it. This is how it is going to store the value. Now let's go here. Let me add one more record. Yeah, for that, what I would do, record 1, and this record 2. This time I'll use something called pure. It's a CSS library from Yahoo. mm, it has 24 column grid, and that is also responsive. And what I'm going to do, I'll just add this record 1, right? It's same as what we did before. Now let me add the second record. I'm adding record 2, but I'm using the same key 1. Let's see what happens in this case. The value is different completely, but the key is same. Let me clear this so that it calls on upgrade needed. So there is an error. If you look at it, there is an error, and you can see exactly what error it is. It says version change transaction was aborted. It was aborted because we are trying to give the same key value, which is wrong. Uh, you cannot try to insert record into a table with the same key. You can update, but you cannot insert. So the keys should be always unique, and that's what I'm trying to say. But what happens, there is a method called put. If I add put, then it's going to update the record which is available on that key with the new value. Let's see what happens. Refresh it. See, it says upgraded success. So let's go here and refresh your DB. Check the value. You see that? So what happened here? I have added a record, the bootstrap record, on the key 1. Then the second line, I'm actually updating, or I'm actually editing that record with pure data. Right, that's what happened. It replaced the first. It actually updated the first record. Um, in our case, there's only one record, but it updated the previous record. Now, um, you cannot see, if you give a second, then it's going to be fine. You'll get 2 records. Let me clear this. Refresh. Let's go here. See, you get two records because now I have changed the key, right, 1 and 2. So you get to see both records. But uh, I cannot keep on incrementing the number manually, which is which may be error prone. So what we can do, there is an optional parameter while creating a table that we can use. This optional parameter is called auto increment. What I'm trying to say to this table is that, hey, just auto increment the key value. I'm not telling what is the name of the key, but I'm just telling auto increment. That's what I'm doing it here. Let's see what happens here. Clear, and everything is fine. I come here and I refresh. You can see the same result. Yeah, I've added I'm not adding the key manually. I just set I just include just increment the key. So it started incrementing the key. I'll show you by adding the third record, then you will understand. There is one library called skeleton, the CSS library. It's really cool, and it's very thin, lightweight library. If you want to use, then you can just go and use it. I will use add. Refresh, creator, go here. You can see the third one is added, skeleton. So I'm not maintaining the key values. It is taken care by the system itself, because I have just mentioned auto increment optional parameter while creating a table or object store. Uh, let's see what happens here. So this is called out of line key. I'll show you how the inline key, then you would know the difference. Because right now it just it says key, and it increments 1 2 3, right? I want to name my key. In that case, what happens, I can mention key path. The key path is that you have to give path to the key, like it has to be okay. I'll put my key. If I what happens, if I try to name my key, what I'm trying to do here, I say that hey, use the key path name as my key. What you see here, this is key only, so I'm telling, hey, rename this one to my key. Clear this, refresh it, you would get an error message. So the object key path did not yield a value. That means this key should be one of these values. It can be name, it can be a grid, or it can be is responsive. So the key path should be one of the values. Okay, um, let's have it as a name. So now I'm telling a key path, you keep it as a name. So it will, now what will happen, all the keys will be like um, the name of the value. Refresh, things are fine. Go here, check this one, you can see it. So instead of 1 2 3, now I know exactly, bootstrap is the key for to retrieve bootstrap details, and pure is the key for retrieving pure data. So now it's a bit, it becomes easy for me. This is this key path. Okay, this key path this key is in line with the value, it yields a value. That means this is inline key. Okay, so the out of line key, doesn't match anywhere. It has its own key generator, right? That is out of line and this is inline. Let's go here. For now I'll create one more ID, means I'll create a new key path. So if I create, then I have to add it over here, otherwise it's going to throw an error message that we have seen already. And third one I just leave it as it is. I'm not adding the ID for the third one, but I said in the key path, then I said, hey, pick up the ID. Let's go here, clear this, refresh. It throws an error message because the third record doesn't have the ID of attribute in it. That's the reason it failed. Here we say, hey, take the ID as a key path, but we are not giving, we haven't given any key path to the record, third record. How we can solve, you can combine these optional parameters. Now if I say auto increment true, then what it is going to do, wherever it doesn't find the key, then it would use the key name still as ID, but it will do auto increment. So it is combined both. Trigger this, go here, refresh, success, refresh, or you can see it over here. See, the third one I haven't mentioned. I have mentioned only 1 and 2. You can see it over here. See, 1 and 2. I haven't mentioned the third one. The third one is coming from key generator. That's auto incrementers adding that third one. Uh, so there are a lot of things like this. Let's get into the other one. But you can add index, so it doesn't mean that you can search only with key. You can actually search with the values, like a name. If you want to search against a name, we have it as a right now we these are the keys, right? ID is the key, but what if you want to search with the name? You can search it by adding an index. So how are we going to add an index? That's also easy. Again, we have to have, the store handler, then create index as the method. We are going to create an index for this table, and for which we have the store handler. Now the first parameter is going to be a name of that index. Maybe I'll add it as name index. Just this is just a name, and then you give the actual name. I'm giving this value here, this attribute name. That's what I'm giving. And now I have added a name. Okay, let's see what happens. Refresh it, everything is fine. I refresh the DB, the table is there, and there is one more field added. There's a name index. You can see the index is also created. So the key path is still same, name. Then I have mentioned, I have indexed the name. Okay, I have indexed the name. Now I can do a search against this table using this name, any of this name. This is how you index. There is one more thing. Now I have added the index. Let me move this one to, that's fine. Let me add the fourth record. This is my fourth record, and I'll just leave the values as it is. Means duplicated value, right? So the name already exists in the record 3 and 4 as well. Let's see what happens in this case. Clear this, refresh, success, refresh. See, you have added all the records. These are duplicated values. The index also will have the same, right? And if you don't want the values to be duplicated, or you want them to be unique, then it's very simple. You can add the third parameter here while creating an index, saying that a unique. So this means the name of each record should be unique. Clear this, refresh it. It failed. You can see it over here, and the detail would be here. It got aborted, and it failed because the value is not unique. That's the reason. Yeah. There's one more framework called Foundation. You can just give a try. I'm just changing the value to not to make it unique. Now let me refresh. So that would make sure that you have all the values unique. See, it got added, the values are unique. That's the advantage of making the values unique and using index. So we would see that how we are going to retrieve these values using those index and keys in our I think we'll do that in our next tutorial. I think regarding this I have covered almost all. Yeah, one more thing I may need to let you know. So this store handler dot add, that's an async operation, and whenever it tries to add, it's like the way we did opening a DB. That was an async operation, and we got back request object, right? The same way, as I told you, any operation, anything you are going to do with the database, it's going to be async. In this case, and this is async, and you are going to get back a request object. Log this. Refresh. You see that this is the request which we got back while adding the record into a table, and that has the same events: on success, on error. Then we have source. This one difference here I wanted to let you know. So this one I'm actually logging here. That is part of opening a DB, and the second one I'm logging here. This is part of adding a record into a table, right? So both returns IDB request. In the first case, if you look at the source, it's going to be null because that's how it is going to be. Whenever you try to open a DB, the source is null, because that's the first time you are doing some operation with IndexedDB. After that, whenever you do it, the source would belong to the parent. In this case, we are actually dealing with the object store, because object store is the handler with which we are trying to add a record into a table. So we get, and the result, it is sucks it is, yeah, it's a success. So error is going to be null, on error will not be triggered, and on success will be triggered, and the ready state is done, because the adding record operation is done. It is success, so that's why we are getting a result is the id, the key value. Now let's fail this, and as I told you before, this comes with the you have just seen, right? It comes with the on success event handler. So store success, and it has on error as well. On error, yeah, I think this is fine. uh, let's uh, let's refresh and see the success case to make sure that, yeah, everything is fine. Yeah, see, it called success, so we are good. And now let's create an error, the same error which we have seen before. I'll just make it skeleton, because the name should be unique, and but I'm duplicating, so that we get an error message. Clear this, go here, refresh, you can see it now. Do you see this now? The uh, object stores on error event handler is triggered, and it actually, you can see here, bubbles true. So it is getting bubbled up in the propagation path. That means it goes to the OpenDB request as well. That's what uh, it happened. You can see that you cannot cancel this bubble. Okay, that's what it says. And yeah, canceling is like you can use uh, let me try this. So this is going to be something like this: stop propagation, propagation. All right, this is how we stop the bubbling. Let's clear this. So the error is still going here, so we cannot stop the propagation. Okay, so I think pretty much we have covered everything about this creating table. In our next tutorial, we would see how to retrieve these values, stored values. How can we modify the table data from outside of this on upgrade needed event handler. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. I will see you again with my next video tutorial.